Good afternoon, good morning to the ones who are gathered together with us today. Our webinar named Urban Future, Thinking About the City and the Services of Tomorrow has been organized with experts and panelists of high level, naming Leny, Maryouri, Jean-Claude Lasserre, and Alvaro Artigas Pereira. Pierre-Marie is going to act here as the moderator. Very happy to be with you today. A very short introduction of where we're coming from with Ressources. Ressources is a think tank which we created in 2004. It's really, I would say, a network of added value members and contributors with the aim to really establish a dialogue by organizing regular debates and highlighting local initiatives taken by different stakeholders, solutions which can really contribute to the increase of access to basic services. Having said that, I will hand over the stand to Pierre-Marie Relecom for you to make the first word and introduction of our webinar. Pierre-Marie.
Merci, Patrice. So today, our topic is urban futures and the way we have to think about cities and services of tomorrow. I would love to introduce Jean-Claude from Saint-Gobain, Leny from Jakarta, working in the PPP program and the urban transformation in Indonesia, and Alvaro Artigas from Sciences Po, who is a fellow of transportation and mobility, if I'm not wrong. Voilà. With regards to the changes the way of living is facing, I would love first to start with Jean-Claude from Saint-Gobain, living in South Africa. He is the general manager of Saint-Gobain Africa. And Saint-Gobain in Africa is very active in sustainable and affordable habitat, according to some recent experiences. Jean-Claude, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I will detail, and you will see there will be not so many slides in reality, but I think it's more to answer later to your question. I assume you see it. Can you see?
Yes, yes, we do.
Very good. So the topic in reality, you know, I will go quite quickly on the main parameter, but you know, for most of you, and you know, I will take some example in Johannesburg of what we are doing, even if we are present with plants in 12 countries already in Africa, but we selected South Africa to discuss. So clearly speaking, affordable housing is a complex topic, and obviously speaking is a major driver of development in African countries. Clearly speaking, there is a lack of housing, around 2 to 2.5 million people, many people in what we call townships here, human settlement in South Africa. And clearly speaking, there is a topic about also how the city is expanding or not expanding. So many topics today regarding which type of housing do we have to build in order to allow people to live decently with the minimum level of comfort in a growing environment as South Africa. And clearly speaking, there is a trend today, and we are many people, many actors, many stakeholders to push also to use better the land, the infrastructure we have, and so to go more and more to multi-story building, to some apartments instead of purely single story. So in a nutshell, this is the topic, you know, $40,000-$50,000. This is more or less the cost of very low until 70 max. So it's also a big topic in reality to find some construction that are cheap enough to be able to be purchased or rented by people. So I give you here two examples of action that we do and that we have done. For example, in South Africa, you know, we have many programs in Kenya, in different countries also, but I selected just in a nutshell just two elements. One is what we try to do to change a bit the construction world in the multi-story building. So in reality to be capable to build quickly with lighter solution that needs much less product, much less time, but at the same time that remains simple enough to be made by the communities. And because I think the unemployment and the employment is also a very key factors. If we want to make affordable housing in near the townships or near the cities, we have also to have a simple solution, cheap solution, but allow it. So, for example, I give you here. I will not detail too much, but we are working a lot on envelopes, on a different partitioning, on different topics. Quite innovative, but easy to install. And later on, we are upskilling people in reality. In our academy in Germiston, for example, that is east of Johannesburg, to try to do that. The key element of that is obviously speaking to limit city expansion and to optimize the infrastructure, and so to at the end of the day reduce also the average square meters of construction for people. Below, you have the more traditional story houses or basic houses that we can get. I just highlight two topics that we are working. So we define some packs in reality to a pre-cutted, predefined in reality for 40 square meter houses. So very basic houses with one room, one bathroom, and a big in a big living space. And we are working also, and we have tested in reality, and we are testing also many topics regarding also the way to be at the same time sustainable and to have a better comfort for the people inside, even if we cannot go to very high-end solutions with insulation, passive insulation, I will say. And you see, for example, in Tembisa, Diepsloot, and Daveyton, maybe you don't know, but they are townships, one of the 50 big townships that exist in South Africa, working with different stakeholders in reality to monitor and to offer. And so we made some houses that are on live and that where the people can really see the difference and to try later from a PPP perspective or from promoters or from only state investment to try to expand that to hundreds or thousands of houses. So in a nutshell, I don't want to comment too much on that, but I think it's a topic. The second topic I wanted to discuss, and I think this is a major topic for many big cities in reality in Africa. Typically in Africa, the habit is to expand the cities, and in reality to instead of using the existing infrastructure that we have in the city center, a bit what happened in US for years in reality, where all the city centers of the cities were totally collapsing or empty, is to reuse in reality the city center, to rejuvenate it, to re-urbanize, regenerate many wards to take care of that. And basically speaking, all the topic here, I give here the example of Johannesburg again, where we have a CBD, that what is called the city center of Johannesburg, that has been the head of all the big banks, the whole of the big entities, top-end houses until the mid-80s, and that have been totally let alone, stand alone with criminality, many topics. And the cities have been moved gradually, kilometers by kilometer, until Sandton today, and tomorrow even after Sandton to Midrand. And obviously here it's a big problematic because all infrastructure are there, not used anymore. You have many buildings, you have many plants, warehouses, and the key job of the Johannesburg Development Agency, and we are working very heavily with them and with many architects, is to try in reality to regain in reality this part of the city and to change the use of the existing building, to have a mixed-use development, to transform plants into apartments, into micro units, into student houses, into small apartments, and at the same time to make, and I think one of my colleagues will discuss about public transportation, to revisit in reality also the public transportation in the city. And to illustrate that, because I have been asked to talk about something, I show what we did, for example, on an existing building about student accommodation. I think it's it's a big topic in reality. Many people cannot pay your rent and a decent rent near to the university. So in Johannesburg city center we have different universities, including Wits, that is one of the top one in South Africa. And this is a typical former office building in reality of the 70s, beginning of 80s, that have been totally reworked internally, destroyed totally to remake micro units of student residence without, in reality, with very light construction, with a minimum of insulation, thermal and acoustics, to allow in reality to reuse and to reuse in reality a big asset that was well located, but that was totally empty, and with a lot of issues regarding security and criminality. And this type of project, we have many in city centers, and we are working on transforming, for example, warehouses in small apartments, offices in apartments, and later on, the municipal government is working also of resecuring in those area and pushing stores and shops to be installed back to recreate a city center. So in a nutshell, it's what I wanted to present, and I will be very happy to answer to any question later on.
Merci beaucoup.
And I was 8 minutes. It was okay.
Congrats. Right now it will be the challenge. Leny, up to you. Floor is yours, and please discuss a bit on what you do and how you see all the challenges coming in Indonesia, notably with government policies, with smart cities and sustainabilities, notably with the ambition of the new capital city. It's yours.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Okay. Yes, okay. Today I would like to give the overview for the Nusantara New Capitals projects. Sorry, I should full screen here. Okay. Okay, so the overview here. Okay, in the outlines of my material here, I will explain a bit of the overview on the IKNs. The IKN is Ibu Kota Nusantara, the Nusantara New Capital City. And also I would like to maybe a bit explain about the stages of the developments, the sources of the financings, and also related other projects that support to the new city IKNs, and could be if there will be times about water project that right now also very becoming a new agenda for the government to keep the existing city to be sustained. Okay, so the overview of the new city of the Nusantara actually is a part of the effort of the government to move the gravity of the economics. Previously, you know that mostly the economic of Indonesia, 60% in island of Java, and you know that Java is only 7% of the total lands of Indonesia, with nearly 60% of the population. So it means that Java is really dense and really busy. So the government moved the new capital as a part of the effort to find new potentials of the economic gravity. And then later on, also we know that in Jakarta itself, in some point there is a constraint to be developed further. Even we can discuss later on. I mean, it's debatable. You know that Jakarta have a threat of the land subsidies, land subsidence, and also the traffic jams, floods, and also poverty in some points. So that would be becoming further. And later on, we know that this new city, this capital city, and this Nusantara city would be developed from a very empty lands. Right now, is this area is the industrial forest upon the palm pepper, right? So then the city will be designed from a very beginning with the new designs. So expected that this Nusantara city will have high standards, smart city, as Pierre-Marie also quite curious about how it will be becoming a smart city, and could be sustainable because there are forests over there, green life over there, and could be dignified as a new capitals. And also we expect with this Nusantara city would become the driver of the economics of Indonesia for the future. Okay, this is the location to give you a brief. Yeah, so the location of the new city in the Nusantara capital at the East Kalimantan, between Balikpapan and Samarinda city. The existing city is Balikpapan and Samarinda, and it's around could be 70 or 100 kilometers from Balikpapan. The core of the city from the Nusantara city will be 6,000 hectares, and the suburb will be 50 hectares, and the expanding area that would be also becoming a development will be 250 hectares. This is the target from the government until 2024, expecting that later on, until 2024, the government would like to build the President Palace. The President Palace is in the view here is a President Palace, right? So that would be finished in 2024. That's what we expect. And then several of could be 4 ministerial offices, and also in the housing for the public officers, and also in the icons of this area for green area, and also iconic statue and etc. Here, and also one of the big mosques. Then could be the Nation Mosque here will be built and finished in 2024. And the next step in up to 2045. So it means that even the core city from the 6,000, in some point governments planning to build it in nearly 30 years. Actually, it's a very debatable in some point for me. Giving suggestion to the government is supposed to be less than 5 or 8 years. So it's supposed to be the government find a way to build this one faster to make this project happen, right? Here is the staging of the population being generated later on. In the first state would be like 500,000 populations, and then the next state would be 1.2 millions population, and then 1.4, and then in 2045, nearly 2 million people expected to stay in the new city. Okay, regarding the investment plan or the cost of to build this Nusantara city, is nearly 33 billions in total. 20%, the 6 billions, will be come from the government budget, and this one is the one that in the core city of the Nusantara city, right? So this is the one that in some point is becoming a big issue, because in government plan it will be in the next 20 years or even 30 years to make it happen. While we know that the 80%, the non-APBN is the government budget, yeah. So the non-government budget is 80%. Somehow is actually is a part of the positive impacts if the 20% can be accomplished. So it's a big issue for the government to make it the 20% happens. Okay, and this is others infrastructure projects to support the Nusantara city. You see here a lot of infrastructure need to be built, right, to connect the Nusantara city with the existing city, Balikpapan and Samarinda, also to the existing airport is somewhere around here, and also later on need to be supported with the VVIP airport and toll roads and ferry terminals, MRT, LRT, others infrastructures, and it will need large investment as well. Okay, this is the schemes of the scheme of the cooperation and the financing. Sorry. Okay, the first 20% will be funded by the governments, and then the government also giving a lot of support as well. The lands actually is belong to the government. So the 50,000 hectares is belong to the government because it's a forest, right? So then it's easy actually to be there is no issue for the land acquisition. And also state utilization of state properties, PSO and SOEs appointed for several of other projects inside there. The next scheme would be the PPP project. PPP project, we know that we should invite any private entities to work together with the government to build the projects, and it can be several projects, or we can define some of the projects, and the government also will support with the let's say VGF, SBOT, government guarantee, government incentive, or somehow also utilize the property and the state property with the private partners. And the scheme of the partnership also quite plenty, the BOT, BTO, and AP schemes. Later on we can discuss if you need more explanation about this kind of scheme. And also for the next 80%, somehow we expect the private sector can do the investments, like mostly for the property business and other entertainers or any business. Yeah, so could be like the BOO and also with the financing, creative financing. Somehow also these three type of source of the financing, there will be like a blended financing scheme can be developed as well. Okay, this is just another bonus. Actually, in Indonesia, right now, so many others related project to keep the city sustained, mostly in the existing city. We develop a lot of project for the water, clean water, sanitation project, and also actually in the affordable housing as well. This is just some samples of the water project at Mebidang, North Sumatra, Wasushoka, Central Java, Umbulan, East Java, Juanda Jatiluhur is in Jakarta, Banten, and West Java, Karian, Banten, Memanasata, South Sulawesi, and this is the projections of the investment cost would be need to develop the sustainable water supply for the cities. Okay, Pierre, I think it's enough my times, and we will all
wonderful. Thank you, Leny.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate. But then after, because it was just on surface, then after we will dig a bit further about the challenges and the reason why the government is willing to shift the capital to another place, and together as well with the challenges they want to impose with regards to a kind of a smart city scheme. Alvaro.
Yes,
switch on your mic, and
okay.
yes, definitely we do.
Wonderful.
And
okay.
It's your time.
Wonderful.
So please.
Okay, so let me just share my screen with you guys. 1 second. Boom. And we should be in. Okay, can you guys hear me now? Yes, excellent. Good. Okay, so I will be providing more of a panoramic vision of what we just discussed. I mean, namely because these two presentations are very specific, so I thought it would be a good idea to open it up to a larger discussion. So this actually deals with the Southeast Asian region and the nexus between city development and transportation services. So before we start, we need to very carefully consider that transportation fulfills a very important role. It has both a functional dimension and a sustainability dimension, quite intrinsically connected to them. And you will see that this pertains to these developmental ambitions and the sustainability imperatives that we face. To begin with, developing Asia, aggregated, will need to invest up to $1.7 trillion until 2030 in order to respond to both development and climate challenges. And the interesting part is that more than 30% of that investment will have to accrue to transportation. So you can imagine, I mean, the amounts we're talking, the importance that this is going to take in the process of the transformation of these cities, such as the one that Leny mentioned. The other element is that transportation plays a very important role as an affordable and universal connectivity form in cities, which is critical for the implementation of major other sustainability goals. For instance, this connectivity pertains to energy, energy pertains to transportation, transportation and energy are in part the drivers of real estate aggregation and agglomeration in most of Southeast Asian cities. And as a consequence of that, of course, well, the impact of transportation to emissions is only second to energy, which actually means that not only this is an imperative for development, but it's also an imperative for any sustainability transition that is serious about that. So a very important element indeed. Another important final element that I want to bring to your attention is that, of course, these two dimensions operate within a metropolitan environment. And the problem here is that metropolis in this particular region are confronted to massive practical and irrepressible public service problems. I mean, one of the reasons why Indonesia is moving its capital in part is because it has been acknowledged that for certain vital networks, I mean, Jakarta can no longer sustain the life that it sustained before in the past. So we'll get to that point in the discussion, I hope. But I think this is important because there is a belief, and there has been a belief for several decades over, that transportation could be resolved, or transportation issues could be resolved by superposing new novel networks on top of the existing ones. See, this idea that the network will solve the issues of the city, irrespective of real estate, market push, irrespective of the lack of planning, that at one point this idea would triumph, and by setting up a very expensive mass rapid transits, for instance, I mean, that would be the solution of most problems. Well, the problem is that as we have observed in many Southeast Asian cases, and I bring about the case of Manila that we work together with the urban school at Sciences Po in our research project, also at the Center of European Studies. There was an obsession with mass rapid transit in the Philippines, in Manila, under the Duterte administration, but unfortunately with very little results at the end, and of course not being able to address the most significant problem of transportation that exists in this massive mega region. So whenever we think about this element of the nexus between city development and transportation, this has to be this consideration have to be extremely relevant for us to pursue our reflection. Beyond that, the other element that we face when we think about transportation in this city development in Southeast Asia is that this city development happens within a blueprint for low carbon transitions that are present in every major city of Southeast Asia, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Metro Manila, etc. And the element here is that these low carbon transition templates operate at times at odds or in total disconnect with the reality of urban processes at work in the ground. And this is one of the problems that generate a very significant tension. This is connected first with these ambitious commitments to development goals, and the idea is that transforming cities and maybe setting up novel cities, and here maybe with Leny we might have an element of discussion, in itself can actually contribute more aggressively to comply with the general objectives of decarbonization. And you see here I mentioned that we are transforming cities into these utopias that are or in undefined realities to come. We have several massive projects of new capitals at work in the region, but even beyond the region. You see this case of NEOM in Saudi Arabia. But here we need to ask ourselves what kind of models are competing, what will be the sustainability of these ambitious commitments at the end of the day, and in particular, which role are going to play the official development assistance, technical cooperation, and also which role firms are going to play in the same token. So I think these are very important questions when we reflect about how transportation, city development contribute or not to decarbonization. Beyond that, the problem that we face is that these national decarbonization goals intertwine with the complexity of governing these processes in the field. And this is where I will just browse very quickly through these. I can elaborate further when we discuss, but there is a dynamic whereby we have several levels intertwining, providing elements of control or disruption for the operation of transportation networks and the mobility choices of the population. Some of them intervening at the federal level, at the national level, centralized planning, setting up corridors for electric vehicles. But at the other end, you have other products or devices that intertwine with this, which are these new green regions, eco districts, or sometimes these new capitals that coexist very closely to the others. It's not the case of Nusantara, but it's the case for Putrajaya and Clark City in the Philippines. And finally, of course, the disruption of these new platform operators, that is a critical component, these new digital driven solutions that intertwine with the rest and bring an added sense of complexity. So as you can see, not an easy thing to do, not an easy thing to reconcile. And even the more so that there is a poor, I would say, aggregated assessment of previous initiatives of decarbonization when it comes to reflect about transportation and urban planning. As a matter of fact, I mean, the region has a long sequence, a long tradition of aggregation of low carbon society plans that have been stopped, reinitiated, at one point aggregating even more ambitious objectives. But at the end of the day, who evaluates on the success of these goals? I mean, how can we assess whether these initiatives of sustainability have actually had any material incidence? Well, this is what we are doing with a project with the University of Singapore, the Lee Kuan Yew and Sciences Po, etc., and the LIEP with carbon inventories. So as you can see, just to give you a last final broad picture, one of the problems that we see is that cities appear to me and appear to us that work on these matters like these sinking icebergs, in the sense that we see an element of disruption on the surface that we believe can be compensated by the addition of superposition of solutions and maybe the juxtaposition of operational solutions as well. But beneath the surface, I mean, we fail to see that there is a fundamental fragmentation of the capacity of the administration of the cities and the local governments to address these issues in conjunction with these national development ambitions. And this is a big problem that I would claim is one of the most significant problems for any services to come in the region in the years to come. So just to go to my final thoughts, that you probably guessed where I'm heading, is that at some point we got lost in translation. See, at one point, these low carbon societies have landed in cities, but we fail to understand how they have landed and to whose benefit. Also, that transportation is the main driver of these transitions in a just way, in the sense that they even out these complex territories and they force them to coexist. And its contribution, because of its emissions, of course, is equally important. And finally, of course, maybe addressing the issue of whether this high-tech, encompassing, massive planning should not be accompanied by also a low-tech adaptation and mitigation to go with it. So on that note, I thank you, everyone, and I'll give my coordinates here for anyone who wants.
Alvaro, I really thank you. I really thank you all, but frankly speaking, I'm totally lost in translation. One, because whatever you said, it says between Alvaro, Leny, and Jean-Claude, my understanding, it has to come from or to start from a political push. And if there's no political push, nothing will happen. However, what we can observe in some countries, notably in India, they go at the opposite of the political push. Today, in India, they are saying, look, guys, we are, the urbanization is going up for 40%. If we are waiting for the approval of the political, the politics, nothing will happen. Then private entrepreneurs decided to define their own smart cities, like HCC with the Lavasa, Reliance with its nearby Navi Mumbai, etc. So you are as well an industrial, Jean-Claude. How do you see, how did you get at that time that capacity on motivating the South African government for the project you developed a couple of years ago?
I think you're right. It's you know, first and foremost, I think on all of those topics, you know, public partnership should work, but obviously there should be a push and a quite drive from legislation and by the way, sometimes budgets, because regarding the states. So let's not lie to ourselves. If there is no willingness from political side to change the reality, nothing can really materialize, and particularly when it brings infrastructure plus construction plus many topics, transportation, obviously speaking. So I would say it's an advocacy of each and every day from many aspects. So from obviously the industrial, but also the you know, the political parties, the society, the people also, you know, that obviously cannot accept to live in indecent environment, and at the same time, there is obviously speaking some capacity for those people also to obviously ask for something better, and later I would say also. If I want to say on another way, also the international community, because at a certain moment of the day, the international community, globally speaking, put into the limelight some elements of a society, of an area, and clearly speaking, when there is a 1, 2, 3 reports from big consultant, IMF, World Bank, or whatever on some topics like that, it may change the priorities in the government, but I fully concur. So what we try to do ourselves with humility is to try to explain what good practices existed elsewhere. You know, not to show that we were discussing before, we have nothing to sell in particular. You know, we want the things to move in the right direction, and later on to take part of it. Is clearly to show, for example, how a given city in another continent work on that. How the system, for example, I take a basic system of HLM in France. You know, sorry for the translation, but so the medium and low income in France, you know, can have access to housing. And it's subsidized by the state with a system of financing also of this system by and I think all those type of topics, all that we can nurture in reality, the political people, inviting them to go to XYZ countries. I think this is our daily job, and we have, obviously speaking, our part to do. But I concord with you. At the end of the day, it's a responsibility that should be shared and co-shared in reality by the different stakeholders.
Yes, because at the end of the day, thank you, Jean-Claude. At the end of the day, if the consumers are not capable to first to consider those challenges, second, if they see or if they can imagine, look, if I have to change my behavior, but my cost will ramp up to the double, to the triple, to the quadruple, hey, I don't go. So if I'm not wrong, typically what you've done in South Africa, and it has been done by Tata in India, you provided a sustainable and affordable habitat with, let's say, the same price of acquisition, if I'm not wrong, which made the things a bit more acceptable for the population. I don't see, because what you've done, and the South African government is one, but in Indonesia, and it's been years that we are discussing and chit-chatting with the authorities with that regards, I don't see, apart from blah blah, the government imposing a strong push. Leny or Alvaro, because you are both familiar with the region.
Okay. Okay, from the new city, from the Nusantara city, it already having a umbrella, you know, like regulation. We have the law, and then that has been established by the president and agreed by the parliament. So actually, in this new city, expected that is already have no issue on the political, supports.
It has
But
been
okay.
it has been already validated. It has been already validated by the parliament. Not yet.
Yes, it's already, but yes,
Not
again, still.
constitutionally, if I'm not
Ah.
wrong. Ah,
Okay. Okay, so then I mean, so yes, it will be still having a lot of debates on the Nusantara new capitals, and yes, mostly is because of the huge of the investments predictions value. You know that even the 20% is already billions, and we also know that others projects surrounds of the Nusantara city only will be happen if the 20% executed, right? So if the government, develop the core, the nucleus city of the Nusantara along the way as they're in line with their plan right now for the 20 or 30 years, in some point it will be very slow downs of impacted the other 80%. So it means even if the government develop this core city, this nuclear city, the Nusantara city for the next 20 or 30%, in some point the 80%, will be much more slower.
forget about the macro.
Yeah, so that's why then
forget about the numbers and the macro. Let's go back to the roots of the discussion. Why the government finally decided to shift the capital from Java to East Kalimantan?
Okay, that's also very political as well, Pierre. So okay, we know that. Okay, it's also discussable as well. Because
it is political. It is not only. It is not mainly by natural resources or natural challenges they are facing.
Okay.
Jean-Claude was mentioning about planification and Alvaro too. And if I'm not wrong, in Indonesia, notably in Jakarta, it's flooding by 2 or 3 centimeters a year, not because of the floods of water, just because there is no water distribution and water network.
Yeah, the water project is ongoing now. Okay, I mean, so from the East Kalimantan, actually we have a lot natural resources, right, to support the city itself. Even it will be developed a bit slow, but later on, even I mean, so there are natural resources that can support the cities as well to be developed. We have the coals, I mean, and also the palm industry over there in East Kalimantan. I think they have 1.2 million hectare of the palms, industry over there. So it means that the oil industry can be developed over there, and also others agricultures and let's say in the tourism area as well, and it's large lands anyway. We can do anything over there, and I heard there will be like potential for the oils or anything else. So it mean that area is potentially to be developed. I mean the city, even Balikpapan right now is also one of the oil industry already been there.
Alvaro, with your helicopter view, what is your own assessment?
No, I can give a very specific view because I know Jakarta and we worked with Jakarta on a water project, so it's a city that I'm familiar with. But I would start maybe with the big picture here, as you mentioned. I think one of the problems that we have with this sort of planning very much ahead is that it relies on a stable flow of public finances, which is great if you look at the TN+1 moment. See, everybody's thrilled about, for instance, Indonesia's economic success. I mean, there's an article on the Financial Times every week. So you see, when the Financial Times publishes an article of your country once a week, it means that you mean something. Other countries get published once a year. But then the interesting element I claim is that, well, it depends on very long trajectories of economic growth. It depends on a sequence of events that need to fall after one another. And the problem is that the history of the region has proven many times over that this is not frequently the case. I mean, look at Malaysia in 1998. I mean, prior to the financial crisis, I mean, big plans were made. I mean, this corridor between Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and eventually what would become Johor Iskandar. I can talk about that because I work on this region as well. This ended up not happening. And one of the problems that we see also in this form of planning is that there is a joint developmental and sustainable quality that for me at times tends to be a little bit dubious. One wonders if the sustainability layer is something that operates rather on top of something that is intrinsically developmental per se. I mean, which is very, very much, I would say, legitimate. See, we're talking about fast-growing societies, middle classes are growing, there has to be a development. It's very easy from our corner of things, you know, to say, well, they need to respect the environment, not grow. We are already in a different position. But I claim that that is one of the biggest problems when we think about that. This joint dimension, the sequence that needs to happen, and these very long-term commitments. See, you'll be surprised, but Southeast Asia is the region of these 2030, 2040 plans, much more than the European Union. See, everybody loves these 10-year plans. Yeah.
Hey, look, I totally go with your point. I'm spending lots of time every month in the region. So, but in Africa too, and I can myself benchmark a bit. But one thing we can federate is, at the end of the day, you have the top authorities who are planning or sharing the thought. Then after, we have a big lack of implementation. Why? Because if I'm not wrong, population is not aware, is not properly educated to understand, and it is not their concern. What low carbonation means. It is not their concern at all. Yes, indeed, when we are talking about sustainable habitat in South Africa, when you have low noises, better air control, etc., just naturally with only a construction material, it is one thing. But if you are asking to the population, they will have to change their way of living. We are all speaking today about smart cities. Wow, saying, let's plan a new scheme of cities, well planned, etc. Just have a look on Gurgaon in India. Just have a look on Masdar in Abu Dhabi, or in the King Abdullah city in Saudi, Brasilia as well. Is there lots of population? No, there are ghost cities. It means that despite of the digitalization or the changes, the smart changes and mobility, it does not make them attractive that much. So
I fully agree. Yeah. No, it's and I would claim it's not eminently necessarily a problem for Southeast Asia, but what I found really interesting is also the trade-off that we're doing, because the problem, as you know, is that we are occupying lands that are arable lands that generate at one point agricultural products. This is what happens in Manila. For instance, Manila is growing to the north. They're going to build this new capital city, which Clark City, because for many reasons, because they need to move the airport. Well, probably you've been to Manila, you see the airport is totally non-functional at this point. It has been for 10 years already non-functional. Everybody knows that. But the interesting thing is that by pushing this, I mean, there is a trade-off that we're doing with already existing biodiversity. And the problem is how we reintroduce nature in the city again. So I know that Nursuntara, maybe this is a question we could ask Leny. I mean, Nursuntara intends to become this sort of forest city, a little bit like Singapore ideal model intended to be, which is not, because
Kuala as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the from the population itself, from the Nusantara, actually it would be generated first from the government officials, right? Until in their plan, in some point in our plan actually. So in 2024, suppose almost 2,500 up to 5,000 government officials would be moved over there. So that's why we prepare for the government offices housing first, right? And several of others, ministerial offices. So from there, then expected that other population will move there with the family, extended family. So that's what we expect, right? So you know that in Jakarta right now is 10 million, with the suburbs could be 25 million populations. And the government official in Jakarta is 1 million, with the families could be, let's say, maybe 3 or 5 million itself. So it's a very potentially yeah, I mean, to keep the target for 1.5 or 1 or nearly 2 million in the next 30 year will be very reasonable. Yeah, I mean, so based on the calculation of the numbers and of the government official and the families, and then later on other developments. Yeah, maybe expected that will be some of the others people who like to live there then move over there, right? So a long time ago, the government, if you ever heard about the Suharto era, we have the transmigrations, move people from Java to the agriculture area around some other islands. And right now, the result of the transmigrations becoming new city. For example, Lampung, Jambi, Bengkulu. Those are, I mean, a long time ago was, like a part of the transmigration developments, and now it's after, let's say, 40 years, so it's become a new capital of their own province, right? So yeah, I mean, so in this kind of story can be repeated again, right? So yeah, but again,
You have
I mean,
lot.
okay, yes.
We have
Yeah.
lot. Jean-Claude, how do you see Africa, not only South Africa, how do you see Africa moving? Kenya, or maybe different Africas moving, the non-French Africa and the Francophone Africa, and particularly the main difference in between the East and the West. Typically Kenya, you were mentioning Kenya. Kenya is moving fast, or faster than the others on that trend. Nigeria, if I'm not wrong, with the new Century City, etc., etc. How do you see the population, not the politicians? How do you see the population absorbing that changes?
Yeah, I think you're fully right. I think there's a different maturity region by region, and by the way, different problematic also because the urbanization. You have still many countries in some part of the Africa that remain rural and that remain with a small cities. I saw a question, by the way, regarding that on some report. When you go to Ethiopia, except Addis Ababa, basically speaking, we are still in small villages all around. So I think the topic is not exactly the same, but in Lagos, obviously speaking, or for example, in Nairobi. Later, you're right, the population has changed. I think, for example, what is amazing when you go to, for example, Kenya today is that on the newspaper, on the voice populi, I will say, on many things, this topic about sustainability, getting more decent aspiration, getting better mobility, investment also on those aspects have been put on the limelight, and at the end of the day, I've got some consequences from the priority of the state, from the architect department to the ministers to the presidents, and this is I think amazing. We have another case like that. Is a smaller country, Rwanda, in Kigali. When you go to Kigali today, clearly speaking, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what has been done in very few years. In reality, yes. At the end of the day. So, but on the other side, if you go to Kinshasa today, clearly speaking, very few happen yet. So I think you're right, Pierre-Marie. I think there are Africas. There are even in the sub-region some very big differences. But globally speaking, it's a topic that pop up more and more. For the young generation. We should not forget that our continent is a very young continent, very yes. open now to social medias. Everybody see what's happened around the planet, and in reality, I think it has a big impact gradually to these people that are pushing in reality this agenda.
Okay, wow, fantastic, Alvaro.
Well, maybe one of the things that Yes, sorry, I thought you.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
No. One of the things that maybe I add to what Jean-Claude mentioned before is that, yeah, every region has its own specificity. And I think here, when we talk about Latin America, for instance, there is a fundamental fact here is that, for instance, Latin America, much of the rural to urban exodus has sort of being terminated. I mean, we have high concentrations of populations living in cities, whereas in Southeast Asia, still, this is an ongoing process. So these grand projects of capital relocation, these extension to new cities or new green regions might make sense in the sense of the demographics and the demographic push that we are witnessing. The interesting thing, maybe again, would be to ask oneself, I mean, to whose benefit they accrue, and what are the consequences also in the long run from the combination of funding. I very much appreciate what Leny presented on how the funding of the capital will come to play, because you mentioned there will be an important influx of $20 billion coming from the Indonesian state, but then there will be PPPs, and then there would be private investment. Maybe the question that we should ask here is what sort of financial commitments we engage for the future. And also because there are the investment with private companies, there is investments of the state in terms of national debt, but there's also the commitments in regards to official development assistance and technical assistance. See, we tend to forget that these monies, even though they are low interest or zero interest, have to be paid at one point in the future as well. See, not everything is a grant. Many of them are monies are lent with a very low interest. So I think having a visibility on this tells us also a lot about the viability of these operations in the long run. I think it's an important issue.
Okay. Yes. For me myself, I'm very aware that the 20% is very key to make this project success, to make the city happen, right? So then right now, if we see from the government's plan, it will need 20 or 30 years. It's too long. So in some points, actually, if we can give suggestion to the government has to find a way, engage with financiers or contractor in huge capacity to support to develop the 20% in less than 5 years or less than 8 years, right? So, and then the payment to the investor could be with the viability payment schemes, for the next 20 years, rather than wait for the government to develop one by one, piece by piece for the next 20 years. It's better we find big contractor to finance the 20%, the 6 billion upfront for the next only 5 years, finish it all the construction costs, and including everything, I mean the core city of the Nusantara, and the government will make budget for the next 20, let's say 10 or 20 or whatever, on the calculation later on when the financial cost that can be discussed, right, with the developer. So that can be that might that make the project success, because the 80% only will be happen if the 20% being executed, right? Because the 80% is a kind of suburb developments, right? So that's actually our ideas, yeah.
But it goes to a question. We got. How do we make more attractive those new projects? We identified Brasilia. Brasilia, it is a ghost city. Yes, it's alive from Tuesday to Thursday evening. Then after, empty. You go to Gurgaon after 6 p.m., empty. You go to King Abdullah City in Saudi, empty. It is a 2 million inhabitant capacity. Only 60,000 people are living in that city. Just have a look. We all know UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, etc. How many people are living in those countries, despite or compared to the number of houses? Wow.
Okay.
And
Pierce. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. If you know typically character of Indonesians, I mean, our country is a potential markets for anything, right? So we are very consumptive. yes, we are just having in the economically in the middle class, right? But the way we consume is a very youth type of consume. So it's whenever there is a new city, whenever there is a like something that being designed and I mean the people is easy to be attracted to car. If you know Indonesian, right? So yeah, we like to spend.
I know
we like to
Brazilian
spend,
too.
yeah.
I know Brazilian too, and Brazilian are high concern as well. Yeah, and when you go to Brasilia, poof, it's empty.
Well, but maybe Brasilia is not the best example because first of all, I mean, it was a city that was built a long time ago already. I mean, we're talking 60 years, which is quite a long time. I mean, I think the urban dynamic was entirely different. Maybe yeah, what you're saying about empty cities afterwards. I was thinking about Naypyidaw also, the capital of Myanmar. Well, now we cannot go much to Myanmar these days, but there is that element for sure. But what I think you were thinking, well, how can we make it work? I think, well, one of the ideas would be going back to services. I mean, I go back to the beginning of what I said in my presentation. I mean, making sure that the services are provided. I think about what Jean-Claude presented also. We could consider housing a service too, in a certain way. The constant provision of housing for the necessities of the city. Well, that has to be provided in agreement with the real necessities. That is, transportation has to be adequate, water provision should be anticipated and not follow the real estate development. See, which is what happens often.
Jean-Claude was mentioning Kinshasa. It's funny because when you're in Kinshasa, you met the presidency, you met the authorities, you meet with the Ministry of Infrastructure, Gizaro, whatever. He has a big willingness, a strong willingness of doing. Then after, they implement? They have no one to do.
But the problem is that you don't empower local authorities. With these cities, what we see is that there was a dynamic in these countries 20 years ago. It was in the 90s of empowerment of local governmental units. See, that was the fashion in Asia in the 90s. Everything was about devolving power. But the thing is, there were some competences that were brought back to these units, but there was no attempt necessarily of coordinating. And this is where it's really interesting. So you have powerful figures, like the current Indonesian president, who was a mayor before, that were cities that are very successful, secondary cities, as you mentioned, Surabaya, Naga City in the Philippines. But there is poor coordination between the different levels of government, also to solve the difficult issues, what you were saying. Because what happens, if you want to solve transportation in Manila, you need to deal with the unions of jeepney drivers, which are a powerful political actor. They can stop the city overnight. You need to coordinate cities within Manila that are often not agreeable to work with one another. So at the end of the day, the problems amount to so many that national authorities decide, well, you know what, we're going to build a new capital city because we cannot solve this. But I think that is unfortunately the easy way, because who is to tell you that in the future you will not be meeting exactly the same problems in the new unit that you consolidated or built? I think this is a very important question.
Yes, and then after you need to have access to the material, to everything. Let's go back to Jean-Claude. You were mentioning, it's a country I love, because I don't look like, but I'm Congolese. So Kinshasa, it is a city I am familiar with. I used to travel there very, very often. How do you see, because I'm discussing with the authorities very often, how do you see properly that willingness of moving the mindset of the population from a more sustainable habitat? They are facing energy difficulties. They are facing raw material, not raw material, but product supplying, etc. So I think it is Kinshasa or DRC is a good example.
I think we are back also to the strength of a state. I think it's not a question. The stability of the state, or the willingness also to position themselves on a medium-term basis instead of just solving immediate topics. It's true that the actual government of the municipal government also of Keene, or by the way, if we go on the other side of all the Katanga region, is exactly much more focused on a very short-term topics. So in reality, I think we were talking before. Master plan is not a growl, I will say, in all countries, but without any master plan, there is no way that you can activate gradually things. So I think what is missing, for example, here in Kinshasa, is that there are some nice discussion, but at the end of the day, everybody is back to his what can I say, urgent agenda, emergency agenda, political agenda, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, nothing moves. So I think the main difference between countries that have moved and that have succeeded to go on this agenda without embedding also their population is when there is a type of resilience in terms of the power, or in terms of at least of the willingness of some key actors at the government level or at the administration level to go on. What we can find in, let's say, Ivory Coast, we can find that in even in some, we are talking later of some countries as Nigeria that are not perfect in all the topics, but in the Lagos government body, there was this issue regarding the development, for example, of Ikoyi, Eco-Atlantic, all those areas. There is an idea that they know from where they start, very difficult, but they want to go forward. South Africa is one case, but we can take also some small countries. So I think, unfortunately, Pierre-Marie, you like this country, but I'm not quite sure it's exactly still on the priority list, I will say, of the government. But as it's true, many topics, including between brackets some political turmoil in many areas or rebellion, to take it.
And it was very interesting what you were mentioning before. Rwanda, it's not Africa at all. And in most of the time when you walk along the street,
Rwanda is Africa. It's a different Africa.
But
Sorry,
you're right.
but
it is a massive example on what finally Africa can succeed.
Of course, but this is, we render to exactly what you said when you started your intervention here. You were saying that I would say the school of all of this is the political willingness and the political implementation, the political priority, political agenda. It's all related to politics. If you look at the difference between Rwanda, of course, and some other African countries by contrast, they put some priority as number one, like education, like water and sanitation, etc. It's very impressive when you go there. In Kinshasa, I'm sorry, but the authorities don't believe that sanitation is a number one issue. Frankly, not. And of course, as it's not at the top of the priority, this is not financed. And we are rendered to just having some kind of World Bank program or donors program, which is not, in fact, at all in line with the expectation of the people and the trend of growth of the population as such, and urbanization, by the way. But I think maybe there are some questions from the participants that you would like to raise, Pierre-Marie.
Yes, we already did one about the attractiveness of cities. And what's about, so Mokhtar said about title within the New York Times, the urban revival is over. People are moving from from big cities to medium and small cities. COVID and the fear of pollution, the impact. What do you see? How do you perceive this affirmation? Do you see it properly? And could we witness about the change from megalopole to small, even very small places?
Wow. I can start. I think it depends a lot of the maturity of the continents and the country. I think this is totally valid in Europe, guys. But I think let's not lie to ourselves. the concentration of power, the concentration of the jobs, the concentration also of the development in emerging will be for years and years again in the main capital cities that we like or dislike. So I think people that get enough money in Europe can take this choice. I will say yes, but I think it's a more what we say in Paris is a more Parisian way of thinking. You know, when you can, but since I'm sorry, I'm a bit too straightforward.
Right.
But I'm not quite sure that these apply really, at least in Africa. I don't think it is. It doesn't mean that no medium city will develop. You know, South Africa is a good example. You have, or Nigeria is a good example. You have in each state in Nigeria, between Port Harcourt, Abuja, or Lagos, you had some development of urban centers in those areas because the population is too big, as we have between Durban, Cape Town, or Johannesburg. But there are massive cities that are dragging, pulling all the people in reality, and this I think will continue for years and years. And lastly, if I want to say something, sorry, I'm maybe too long on Africa, it's very super costly also for a state to develop 10, 15 medium cities in a country today. And I think this is another topic in terms of infrastructure, transport, electricity, water, sanitation.
Oh, I think we lost him.
Ouais, Alvaro, go ahead.
Maybe you can jump into what he was saying on the services if he's not coming back. Because yeah, this idea that we can move to secondary cities hinges on the ability of providing reliable electricity and internet to begin with, which is not the case systematically around the region. Big problem there. And then the thing is that much of the development of these economies hinge around services these days. I mean, the boom in economic activity in Southeast Asia is happening in services. When I was in Kuala Lumpur 3 weeks, 1 month ago, and you see the level of high rises, business districts that are being built around the provision of banking services, BPO or whatnot. I mean, then you clearly see that people will keep on gravitating towards cities and mega cities and mega city regions. Maybe we could return the question and maybe say, well, maybe we could alter the way in which mega city regions are being developed as to cater in a better way and maybe a less, I would say, dysfunctional way for the populations that live within it. That could be the entry point.
Yep. Maybe it's we are done with the questions, or except there's 1 or 2 additionals coming. If not, I would suggest I will pass the floor and the mic to Patrice. It's your time right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I have one question about I was a little bit curious about how Jean-Claude Lasserre was addressing, but he's not connected with us, seems not connected with us anymore, unfortunately. But how to address, in fact, the inclusiveness in terms of services in his Saint-Gobain trust. Okay. Anyway, I have another question for you, Alvaro, which is linked to what you name in your presentation as a new platform operators. What do you have in mind of that? And do you think this is something which could be a key driver of a differentiator of the growth and the development of the urban conurbation in the future?
Well, I think this is a very interesting topic because everybody's working on that peripherally, to the very least these days, which is how the digital possibilities opened by big data, algorithmic governance are having an impact into very traditional sectors. As a matter of fact, you even talk these days about smart water. So that proves that now even water can be intelligent and smart.
Oh, absolutely.
But for transportation services, I mean, this is having a big impact because you see cities in the region that are confronted to the same challenges we are facing in Europe, for instance, with these companies like Uber, not to mention them, or that provide ride-sharing services, micromobility, interacting. Well, they have an ability to complexify what is already a very complex environment. For instance, in cities where you don't have sidewalks or where sidewalks do not exist or exist very little, then the coexistence of these services in regards to this, I would say, sketchy public planning can become a real problem and a real nightmare for the livability of cities. And I'd say that these days also one of the interesting, I would say, tropisms of sustainability is that we don't think anymore about sustainability in terms of how they can abstractly contribute to decarbonization, but these days sustainability has to be connected to livability. See, sustainability that doesn't improve the quality of living of people living in cities doesn't mean anything anymore.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I think it's a question for all of you, in fact, all of the panelists, but also including Pierre-Marie as a moderator. I would like to just to understand how confident are you in the, I would say, short, medium-term rollout of new solutions to try to increase the welfare of these growing populations in the urban areas. Maybe Pierre-Marie, do you want to start with that?
I can.
Your confidence is not so much.
Yes, no,
Is it?
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I take the point of Jean-Claude before. In our countries, yes, definitely. In the Western industrialized country, definitely we have to. And second, despite of the government willingness or not, and we don't care, at the end of the day, it is a bullshit because finance is governing the world, and finance commit itself in becoming carbon neutral by 2030 or 2035. So at the end of the day, whatever we want to do, we will have to apply those politics.
So you are not.
On the other hand, when we are in Africa and Southeastern Asia, according to my experience, you know, my duty is to travel every week. So according to what I observe, we are far away from that concern. Yes, indeed, in some cities, in some countries, they're a bit ahead from the others, notably South Africa. But for the rest, wow, wow.
Long way to go still.
I think even in Southeastern Asia, we were mentioning about planification, but then after, when we have planification, we need to have education. We need to have high authorities well educated to better understand and to better plan and to better forecast. But once we start about the thought, or when we from the thought we are willing to implement, frankly speaking, it is the white eye. They don't know how to implement it. They don't know, they do not understand. And they don't want to ask a third part to substitute them, you know, because they are too narcissistic and they are too proud of them. And it is something, sorry to say that very straight to the point, but in Indonesia, Leny knows, you know, they are calling me a professor in many meetings. I'm very straight to them, which is for Javanese, it is sometimes insultant, but you know, you are facing those discussions. They know better than yourself, but they don't have any track record. We are talking about public transportation. I am dealing with Petit KAI, which is the local RATP. It's been 2 years that we are willing to propose them
They're going to teach you how to be patient.
A win-win thing. And frankly speaking, at the end of the day, you know, they are facing accident. They are facing, in the trial period, they are facing accident, etc. They are delaying the project for not weeks, years, because of that lack of, and they know, but they don't want to. You know, you have the politicians who are saying, hey, buddy, you are going to be very late. And it is something very concrete I'm saying. And the CEO of PTK say, yeah, but it's not my problem.
But okay, and Leny, how confident are you yourself in this short or medium-term solution implementation?
Okay, for me, actually, the key of the success of the project is supposed to be the affordabilities. We have to understand how much is the money that people are able to spend. Whatever is it, to buy a house, to transport, or to buy anything. I mean, all the services that, let's say, the government will provide, right? So, and for me, it's better is affordable and also meet with the needs of the community, of the population, right? So
Makes sense.
we
Make a lot of sense.
no need to have something that too much, you know,
No,
because
it has to be
of
accessible.
catch up all the practice, and then in the end, it's becoming empty, or it's becoming, you know, difficult to be operate because of too much expenditure need to you know, to be spent to operate the high tech technology or whatever is it, and the population itself also cannot afford it, and then the government keeps subsidize it, so it's not really good. So it's better we have to make a project that affordable, you know, like for the public housing has to be affordable public housings, right? For the transportation could be with the technology that, let's say, maybe LRT too expensive for us, then we have to have with the monorail or trams,
Yeah.
right? So it's a bit cheaper, right? Okay, with the MRT, we still can continue because it's financed with the G2G, right? By our Japanese finance, and only having very low financial cost. Different with the LRT, because LRT using the project financing, which is we get the project of financing from commercial banks that a lot difficult to pay for later on to repay. So it's a kind of a bit messy from the beginning, and now it's facing the situation of how to get the subsidy from the government to continue to be operated. So it's kind of I mean, it's not becoming a challenge, right? So so even from the water itself, so we need to have a technology not too high tech with the membrane or whatever. So we have to have a let's say any technology that can supply water, clean water,
you know that
drinking
in water
water, but
business,
still affordable for the
being
population.
simple is not cheap. That doesn't mean to be cheap.
No, it is not.
It's just
No, it
simple.
doesn't mean cheap, but it's
No,
supposed to be just affordable.
That's why
right?
I
Affordable.
really
So
feel
meet with the requirement or meet the capacity of the population who will get the services, right?
But thank you, Leny, for having raised this, for me, critical issue, which is affordability of the solution, in order to be sure that mid and long-term objective, short, mid and long-term objective in urban growth can be served. Jean-Claude, do you have any confidence as an industrial, as an entrepreneur also? Do you have any confidence on the I would say short, mid run of this urban growth futures?
You know, one more time, I think I'm totally aligned with what you were telling before. I think it's really okay. I concord with what Pierre-Marie was telling before, because you know there are rules that gradually will have to apply everywhere sooner or later. This is obvious. You know, we see it already on the financing, for example. You know, when you want to finance some development, some mining, some oil and gas projects, etc. You know, the creation also on more and more bank of green bonds. So you know, all that is really will basically spread all around the planet at a different speeds, at a different paces, definitely, but it will. Later on, it's all about capabilities of the state and priorities. Obviously speaking, when you are in a country where the first priority, let's take, I don't know, Ethiopia today, is to stabilize the front with the war and to feed the population. I would say these affordable, these sustainable development in cities is priority 2 or priority 3 or priority 4. And I think let's be clear about that. On the other side, if I want to finish on that, is also maybe a major swap or switch in the future of the way that the development agencies are sending money to those countries, because you know, all the multilateral or bilateral is aimed in reality to what can I say, mitigate this and to try to in reality put more money on the area where the states are not able to match it, and instead of only going to the pure salary payment, you know, as it was the habit, you know, in the years, but maybe to go on that. And so I think I'm confident on the long term. The only question is that what the long term means. You know, I'm not quite sure that
the 2030, 2050 made on the COP21 and so on will be exactly on the top of the agenda of many countries, even if they will have to make efforts one by one, because if not, last point I wanted to comment, and particularly on emerging countries that want to export, you know, and here Southeast Asia, I was in South America before, or some African countries as South Africa. You know, let's take a very basic example. If you are exporting 70% of your cars to Europe, what is the case of South Africa today, basically, if your energy is not green, if your CO2 embedded in your cars is not good, one day it will have a very big problem for the local economy. So everything is interlinked. And what I see about that works also for urbanization, mobility, and construction.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. Alvaro, I will give you the floor just to end this session. We have a couple of minutes, and I'd like to have also your thoughts as a researcher and who is really working on the visions mid-long term. What do you think in terms of confidence on the rollout of solutions?
I will tend to concur with Jean-Claude. I think, yeah, we will get there. I'm utterly certain, maybe not in the calendar that governments have so ambitiously planned for themselves. I'd say that there are two elements that for me appear to be key here. It's about, first of all, what you mentioned about the ODA, the Official Development Assistance, Technical Assistance. For me, there has to be better coordination and a better capacity to mediate with the local administration, whether at a ministerial level or at the local government level, just to be sure of what they are signing for. See, the ODA tends to have this sort of Faustian quality to it. See, you're signing a contract and you don't see much where that will take you when you have a limited capacity. But then the other problem that we need to deal with, I would see in receiving end countries, is the administration itself. See, one of the big problems we see when we work with, for instance, carbon decarbonization plans, is that administrations do not collaborate with one another. And why? Because there's a very important turnover. So administrations are very jealous of the data they hold, and they don't like to share it because they feel it's losing part of their power or prerogative. So I think combining these two elements, but acknowledging also that this will happen, and it will happen because finance, green finance is heading there. I think it will be the perfect solution for it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are ready and almost on our time. I'd like, as just a closing thanks for all the panelists and Pierre-Marie to have driven as a moderator exceptionally this session of the first webinar, September webinar of the think tank resource. So thank you very much, Leny. Thank you very much, Jean-Claude. Thank you, Alvaro. It was great to have you with us today. Of course, the one who have not taken the stand with us today can revisit through our website this video and this webinar. And I hope to see you soon, very soon, with a new subject in the 15 days to come. Thank you again, Pierre-Marie. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a nice day.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Have a great
Yes,
day.
bye.
All of
Thank you,
you.
Pierre-Marie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jean-Claude.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Patrice.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.